All right, cool. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. So I'll just quickly, before I introduce the speaker, I want to quickly say a couple of things. This is the second meetup in the series of the African Disciplined Agile Meetup, and we are quite lucky to have Donte with us today. We'll be talking about MBI. MBI has been making some, buzzword lately. Is the minimum business increment from the Disciplined Agile, toolkit. We are quite lucky today because we have someone who has practicalized that at work, and he's going to be bringing learnings from what he has done, the pitfalls, the success, what to avoid, what to capitalize on. So if there is a place to be, this is where you need to be. So today's topic is implementing minimum business increment, and it's a case study. But before I hand over to Donte, let me quickly say a couple of things about Donte. Donte is currently an agile coach at Q2 in Austin, Texas, and is very experienced in agile transformations. He's well-versed in so many, agile frameworks such as Scrum, Kanban, Safe, and Lean methods. He has conducted value stream mapping exercises across organizations, and he has helped organizations to reduce waste and improvement, which is the sole reason why transformations are done anyway. And so we are lucky to have him today. He holds a couple of certifications in the PMI suite of certifications, such as the PMI ACP, the DASM, the DASSM certification. And I know that he's currently studying for his DAVSC certification. So he's one of a couple of people who holds a certification worldwide. I'm also studying for that, so we are colleagues in that. So what does it do when it doesn't do agile? It's not all about agile. He enjoys spending time with his family, definitely. He reads books and also enjoys old TV shows. Without further ado, I will hand over to you, Donte, to take us forward. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, so, well, great introduction. So just a little more, I think, background about my company, because that'll help kind of explain why I had so much fun implementing minimum business increments here. Q2 is based in Austin, Texas. It is a fintech company. So here in the States, we have our big three banks. But what my company does is it provides a platform for smaller community banks, or what we call mom and pop banks, to be able to move into the online space, because let's face it, not many people walk into a bank to do their transactions. They would rather pull out their phone and do the transactions there. So that's one of the services we provide. We also have a platform that's used by applications such as Acorns, Credit Karma, and some other ones, as far as anything managing money, savings, or anything along those lines. So it's a pretty cool company to work for. It's growing like crazy, which is the reason why they're really focused on trying to become more agile, because it can't operate like a startup anymore. And I think we've been around maybe about 20 years now. So with that, I'll just get into, if I can share out my screen here, I'll get into the presentation about minimum business increments. But before I get started, does anyone have any questions about Q2 in general, or for me in general? Okay. So minimum business increments, and like Pete said, this is I don't like to use the term buzzword, but it is becoming very popular. And it's something that in my studies in Disciplined Agile that really stuck out to me. It's kind of, if you think about it from an Agile perspective, it's common sense. The biggest biggest issue with it is trying to get other people, especially when you have traditional project management that's moving towards more of a lean or an agile perspective, trying to sell the project managers to think in these smaller chunks at the portfolio level, not just at the team level or the teams working that way, but bundling up the work into a minimum business increment. So what is a minimum business increment? I like to look at it with 4 different lenses. One, it aligns the business, stakeholders, and development priorities. 2, it's the smallest unit of work that provides value to the stakeholder. 3, again, smallest batch of work that will allow for faster feedback to ensure that we are moving in the right direction. And the biggest thing is it's a container. It contains all the work that's needed, not just development and operations. And to me, that sticks out the most because in my experience, if we may have an epic with all kinds of different tasks in it for development, for operations, for support, but there are things in there missing like marketing or legal. So when you think of an MBI, it contains everything that's kind of needed to deliver value, not just the technical part of it. So this is funny because Pete, like I mentioned before, the call started, there's a big difference and some people misuse the term MVP. So I want to spell that out here because I've had this conversation with some of my project teams. There's a big difference between an MVP and an MBI. So with an MVP, minimum viable product, it's a small batch of work to validate a hypothesis about a new potential product or solution. It's a mechanism to validate learning about a product or solution. It's often just a prototype or just enough work to get something in front of the customer, and it can quickly be abandoned and a team can use it or pivot to something else. And it's an investment in learning. So literally it's just it could be a drawing, for example. It could be a wireframe. It could be a mobile app where you just click a button and it pops up a message. It's not a big ongoing project. So again, it's an investment in learning, and it's to validate a hypothesis to help pick a new solution or a product. An MBI, minimum business increment, is the smallest batch of work that is of value to the customer or stakeholder. It provides a quick realization of value. It allows quick feedback to show the product or solution that you picked that may be possible, that may be coming out of the MVP is the right solution or is being built correctly. It's made up of stories, tasks, again, MVPs and other types of work. And then it's an investment in value. So again, those are very totally different things. And I've pointed that out here to my the project managers here, as well as the technical team, because everybody here uses the term MVP. I don't know why, but I was able to discern that for my teams. So when we look at the parts of an MBI, and I'm going to go through these slides really quickly, and just so you know, some of these slides were actually used in my presentation to my PMO to discuss and to pitch MBI. So alignment, how do MBIs achieve milestones and contribute to imperatives? So here we use imperatives. One of those was to migrate 25% of our data center to the public cloud. It was made up of a milestone, build a new Kafka cloud cluster. And then one of the MBIs for that was the actual building the cloud. So again, if you look at it, if you think about Agile, starting way up at the top, everything is either a stakeholder comes up with an idea, they break that down into milestones, and then the technical team and the project management team break those down into the MBI level. So the other thing that an MBI has is measurable outcomes. So how do we measure the value that we're delivering? One of the things that my company always asks is, how do we know we're doing the right thing? And we have these leading and these lagging metrics to help us determine that we're moving in the right direction, that we're not wasting our time, that we're actually saving money. So for example, one of the MBIs I worked on, this was the outcome, save 400K within the first year, cut down operational overhead by 75%, free up server rack space in the data center, and have an uptime of 99.99%. That uptime is a metric that kind of rolls up to what our mission statement is here at Q2 as far as our infrastructure. I think in our contracts, we try to guarantee that you have 5 nines is what we call it. And that's how we get paid. So requirements and resources, what is needed to deliver the value and who will do the work? Again, real world example here. We determined that for this MBI, we needed our SRE team, we needed architecture, or we needed software engineering, and those items up at the top are what they're delivering. So define a process to manage API keys. Architecture team is going to upgrade to the latest version, and software engineering is going to do the inventory and performance testing for the MBI. The other thing that's very important, risk and dependencies. What events or uncertainty and links between work can affect the outcome? So risks, and then I really want to point this out with MBIs too, because this definitely needs to be a part of it. Work to identify during the discovery process. So when you're sitting at the table with the stakeholder and your architecture review team, what risks do we have? They should definitely be documented in the backlog. One of the other things that we're really focused on here in my team is having it in the backlog. Don't just put a risk register in an Excel spreadsheet and store it somewhere. Let's put it in the backlog as part of the project. That way, if the risk comes up, we can assign it and prioritize it to a person and take action on it. If it's found during the construction phase, document it in the backlog as well. All risks aren't bad. Some of them are good. So again, analyze, document, prioritize, and assign. Dependencies as well. This is something that we had to get better at as well. Work to identify during the discovery process, included in the MBI. It can also be discovered during construction or execution. It could be people, assets, or other work. For us, we use dependency links in JIRA to make it visible. So dependencies, one of the things that we've always missed is our stakeholders would say, I need your DevOps team, I need a developer, and I need architecture. Well, they also need people to support them to deliver the work. So I have a slide coming up here with what we call an architecture review board, which is representation from all of our teams. They sit and listen on the call, in this case call, or if it was in person in the meeting with the stakeholder. Once they identify who they need, someone from that team will speak up and say, well, we're also going to need this team or this person from this team to support us. So any questions before I get into the real world problem and solution?
Let me just quickly encourage people to, if you have any questions, you can either type it into the chat and I'll reiterate it to Donte. If you have any question as well, you can also say something, and then Donte will really probably say, yeah, I can answer it now, or probably after. So that's the way it works. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
Monorani, got a quick question for you.
Yep.
You mentioned with the risk, you can record it in the backlog. It's a new thing I've heard about because we usually use Excel, as you mentioned. With the risk item, once you record in the backlog, do you just delete it eventually or close it, or what happens if it doesn't eventuate?
Yeah, so what we do is, since we use JIRA, what we'll do with the risk, if it doesn't come up, we try. So for us, we did have it in Excel as well, but then we would put that spreadsheet somewhere and forget about it. So, it wasn't visible when the project teams were looking at the actual risks or at the issue that came up. It wasn't in the backlog, so they kind of forgot about it. So we ended up putting it in JIRA, and if the risk doesn't occur during the project, when we close out the epic or that part or the MBI, we just close the task as won't do. It's an option in JIRA. You can either say close won't do, close withdrawn, or close duplicate. There are a couple of options. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks for that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So I'm not a project manager by skill, so I can't make those beautiful, pretty Gantt charts or anything like that. And I couldn't copy and paste from the Gantt chart for my MBI because I don't have access to it. I just help create the actual MBI. But what I do have is kind of like a mock-up or kind of a 10,000 foot view of it. So our main project was this cloud architecture one in the middle here. My organization, my PMO, we sit on the infrastructure side. So DevOps, architecture, site reliability, DBA, anything, data center, that all falls into our area. Someone had a question too, hold on. How can you apply MBI in a component team whose goals are stated in a technical team? That's a perfect question. And I think what I'm going to show you in the next slides will help you with that. So our infrastructure team is made up of those teams that I just mentioned. We also have an observability team that takes care of monitoring, logging, and alerting. And our cloud architecture project here that you see is actually, it needs to be completed because our development team is going to use this cloud architecture for the next version of their banking product. So very simple here. The thing about this project in the middle is it is a beast. And when I say it's a beast, it started 2 months after I started here in 2019. And it was just an agreement with our vice president of our department, speaking with the development manager saying, hey, we want to move your product to the cloud. Okay, sounds good. How long is it going to take you? About a couple of months. Yeah, and I have one person to do the project for you. He didn't get the PMO involved at all. He didn't really sit down and talk to the architect about it. And so the architect just played all the roles, project manager, correspondence, figuring out who he needed. And again, this project is still going on to this day. That's the bad news about it. What I'm going to show you in the next few slides is the good news. So you have this cloud architecture project. Once it's done, that development team can move to, they can migrate their product to the cloud. What we didn't realize is, if I can get to the next slide here, there were so many different moving parts that were needed. So I'm going to start with the MVP and work my way up. So if you look in the observability swim lane here, that monitoring and logging project was an MVP. That MVP was, we need to save $1.2 million. So we need to figure out a tool to replace what we have, or figure out if we're going to use the tool and pay the money for it. So they worked over 4 sprints to come up with an MVP. At the end of each sprint, it was trying to figure out, can we do that? Does it make sense to go to this tool? Is it as robust and is it as valuable as what we have now? The outcome of that project, that MVP, is going to be a new replacement for the tool or an upgrade to the tool. So pretty big project there. What we also found out, if you jump back up to the infrastructure swim lane there, we were moving to a new platform. So when I first started, they were doing all of their cloud architecture on a previous tool. Management said, we want to use HashiStack. It's a HashiCorp product. So now we have to build this new platform. Well, that platform is also going to need monitoring and logging. So while this MVP is being built, we need to figure out, how are we going to monitor, log, and do alerting from it? The biggest thing that kind of stuck out to us and what made us kind of, it took us back, is we've had this beast of a project in cloud architecture going on since 2019. We've already put it on an existing platform, but we're going away from that platform. So we had a lot of work that we did for nothing that we had to trash, because now we're going to this new HashiStack platform, and we have to be able to move the product to that. The other thing that you'll notice here is only one of these projects has a PM, the migration to the cloud one, which is still not started. It won't be delivered or started until after this cloud architecture project is done. So needless to say, there were a lot of, excuse my terms, pissed off people about this. It's like, well, what do you mean we can't do this without this? We can't do this without that. And lucky for me, being the nerd that I am, started looking around Disciplined Agile, and I came across an article about MBIs. The thing with MBIs is it's kind of derived from epics and SAFe, if you think about it. So if any of you have worked with SAFe, it's kind of the same process. I think it's a little bit neater and involves more because it's not just the technical work, it includes everything. So what we had to do is take a step back and figure out what parts and pieces of these different projects that we needed. We also had to make sure that we didn't have multiple project managers stepping on each other's toes or sitting around and waiting for each other. So we had to get in a room. We figured out with a team of people what was needed. Does anyone have questions about this slide first? Okay. So we came up with an architecture team. So define risk, standards, and other. It's made of representation from our architecture team, observability, tools, automation, SRE, DBA, infrastructure, DevOps, other, as many teams as possible in our company. And it's the thought leaders or the SMEs that sit on these teams that know offhand that, hey, yeah, that's not the direction we should go. Or you're going to also need to bring this person along, or there's another project in flight that you're going to need to add parts of for this. So we took a step back, we got the stakeholders together, we got the one project manager that took over the project, we got her and all of us in the room, and I pitched this presentation that you kind of see here using MBIs. I gave some statistics on these projects are going to crash and step into each other, and we're just going to have a lot of technical debt buildup unless we package it all into one small container and work that as a project and not individual projects. So this term architecture team, it's a working title for the team. I think it's going to become more formal here in Q2. So working with the architecture team, we figured out of each of those projects, here are the pieces that we need to get our cloud architecture project back on track. So from our observability team, we just needed data collectors, a new setup of Splunk, which is the tool that they use, some subnets and networking changes. From our infrastructure team, we just needed core infrastructure and an environment build. And the parts of the actual cloud project that's causing the problem, once we have that stuff in place, we will be able to build the whole cloud environment as well as our CI/CD pipeline. And that pipeline would actually start allowing the development team to test out moving customers to this new cloud environment. So one MBI to get the main project back on track, one PM to manage the work. It's very important. Because they're like, well, we need to have all the project managers involved with this. No, you just need one person to manage this small MBI. Don't look at this as a huge project. Look at it as a minimum business increment, the smallest piece of work to help us get back on track that's going to provide value to the stakeholder, which is the development team, so that they can start figuring out how they're going to migrate customers to this environment. The resources pull the work as they have capacity instead of pushing it into sprints. The one thing with our infrastructure team here is Scrum was bad for us because we have a lot of operational work here. We have to keep the lights on. So we're using more of a Scrum-Bon or a flow-based agile to work. So as these teams had, or these resources had capacity, they would pull the work into their boards and work it. They would also meet on a regular basis. In some cases, they would meet daily. They would have a daily stand-up when it really came to getting down to getting this done, so that they made sure that they were all on the same page. So this was the MBI that we came up with. And I think that, and this is the new timeline. Cloud architecture. Here's the timeline from August all the way up to January. This is all that needed to be done from all of those projects in one package to put it back in place. And right now, in March, they're currently moving customers. I think right now, I think we have about 3 customers on this new environment and testing it out. Once they approve it and go through everything, they're going to migrate all of the existing customers to this new cloud infrastructure. So again, MBI for us, this was it. Taking these little small pieces and parts from other projects, putting it into a container, and having one project manager and a small team just work on this instead of trying to run 3 different programs or projects at the same time. So any questions about that?
Quick one. To what extent is this approach usable in a scaled environment, especially when you're using frameworks like, say, SAFe or any of the other scaling frameworks?
Like I mentioned, I think SAFe has something like this. They consider what they call their epics to use this kind of format. But to me, I think it's more if you're using cross-functional teams and you're passing the work upstream. With this approach, I think it takes outside the technical team. And one of the reason I think this might be a bad example is because you don't see anything with marketing or legal or anything along that approach. So when you say scale, you know, to me, that means not just thinking about your technical teams, but thinking about if we needed to pull in a customer from the banking client, what do they have on their project list that we need to include in there? So is that what you mean by scaling using MBIs?
No, I'm talking about, say, for example, you working on Amazon, for example, that's kind of huge, right? Would you use this kind of approach to product development, for example?
Yes, yeah, you can. Yeah, it's not just, don't look at it as just infrastructure or what I have presented here. So you're saying if Amazon or if your company has a new application that they're developing, for example, right? Let's say you had, you know, your budgeting cycle started in October of last year, and you had 3 big rock projects and 1 little small project that that needed to be completed. That's on your roadmap for the year. You can build an MBI across all of those projects. If they have dependencies upon each other, you definitely should use an MBI instead of just, if you look at it from a Gantt chart of view, this project is going to start in January and we can't start this whole project until you know, this part of the project is done. It's more taking what you need from the project and putting it into a small container and just working on those little small chunks and delivering value that way, instead of just running 3 programs or 3 projects together. Does that, I'm hoping I'm helping. Is that helping?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yep, okay. Any other questions? I will say it was absolutely, and I'm still trying to sell this concept to use this across the board. And I have the project manager that helped me with this to execute it. I really say, hey, every project management meeting that you go in, tell them the good and bad with this. And she said, it's nothing but good, because we still have some projects that, while they seem like they'll work traditionally with waterfall or just even traditional agile, working in those small iterations, our project managers aren't sticking their head up off the sand with the project team and looking outside of our hosting organization to realize someone else in Q2 may be working on the same thing, or you're going to impact what they're doing. You know, they're using a platform now and they're doing all of this other stuff, and you're getting ready to yank the rug right up from under them on their project planning. So it really is what we're really trying to sell is, yes, use an MBI, but before you even do that, stick your head up and look around the organization, use systems thinking, look end to end, talk to other people in the organization. Yeah, we're a small part of Q2 and we hold, you know, everything passes through infrastructure, but we affect so many people that we have to look end to end and talk to people and get other people included in our projects and make sure that their work is visible, make sure that we can see what's going on with their work. So yeah, that was it, guys. Any other questions? Anything in general, if you want to ask any general question.
Yeah. I guess my take home here is one of the slides just before you started talking about how you applied it, where you differentiated what the difference, between MBI and MVP. This is where a lot of people really do not, understand, or they're trying to learn. And making that point is quite very important. So if I can reiterate that, if you are building something for the very, very first time, and you are treating it as an hypothesis, you don't know much about it, you need to make a decision to either stop or continue, pivot, or build. We can have an MVP, the minimum viable product, because the outcome of that, or what you want to consume out of that, is the learning and the decision to take. However, once you have something on ground, like in your situation, there are projects on ground and you just need to build on top of that. It makes more sense to have the minimum business increment, such that there is a definite outcome at some point that you can say, oh, this is our MBI. At that point, it's no more than MVP, because you have your results, you have the result, the hypothesis, you've done your experiment, and then you have something tangible that you can actually, that your customer loves or your business loves, but you want to build on top of it. I think that was really, really great. And in those days when I did my Six Sigma, and then we talk about, the value. When you mention 5 nines, that your company is really kind of really resonated with me. So thank you so much for really sharing this presentation, making us to see how MBIs can be applied on, in real life situation. And it's kind of really practical and nice to have. Just a quick one to check if Femi's earlier question was answered, which is, how well can you apply MBI in a component team whose goals are stated in technical teams? Do you think that was really answered, or you want a little bit more discussion around that? And that's to Femi, if you're still available. Okay, I think it dropped off. Okay, cool. Yeah. Any other question? Any other question? It could be some addition. It could be, a comment as well that you have around this presentation, or around MBIs in general.
Please feel free, guys. I'm here for the next 30 minutes. So,
and then we have quite a number. We have quite a number of experts in the room that could actually also answer a couple of more questions.
Hey, Donte. I have a quick question for you. I was wondering, in your experience implementing DA in organizations, what are the biggest challenges and how to face them for anybody who is starting with DA in their company? Thank you.
I think that's a great question. And I think with anything that you try to implement, it's actually 2 things. One is changing the mindset. I think as being an agile coach or even a scrum master, you have to be a great salesperson to get people to change their way of working. I think the other part is you have to have leadership buy-in. I think the biggest challenge for us here, for me here, is I came into Q2 as the only, I was hired as a scrum master in my organization. And one of the things that I asked is, yeah, this is great for the teams, but what about project management? What about the inputs into the enterprise, into the team from the enterprise? And my boss is like, whoa, one thing at a time, but I think the biggest challenge is if you are asked to do an agile transformation for a company, especially using disciplined agile, is there's not one way of working. So for example, they wanted all of our team to use sprints because we need to know when something's going to be due. And I'm like, well, I mean, just because it's scheduled in a sprint doesn't mean they're going to get to it, especially our teams, because they're operationally heavy. And two, you know, you're battling, you're throwing, you know, poop over the wall on this site reliability team when they have poop coming over the wall. I'm not using the S word because I don't know if people curse or not, but from just trying to keep the lights on and keep the infrastructure up. So that was one of the biggest challenges is, no, we don't have to use Scrum. We don't have to, just because you went and searched Agile on the internet and the first result was Scrum, doesn't mean that's what we have to do. We have to really get together and figure out what is the best methodology for each team to use. You know, for leadership, don't dig down too deep at the team level. Just worry about it at the business level or the portfolio level to make sure for us that we're doing things to keep those 99999s in place or to keep customers happy. For project managers, it doesn't have to all be waterfall, or if waterfall fits your project, that's fine. But just because that approach works on one project doesn't mean it's going to work on every project that you have in your portfolio. So I think the biggest challenge is that, you know, one of the things that they always joke about is our Agile guy talks a lot about planning. Well, there's nothing in Agile that says we don't plan. You know, that I think that's exactly context counts. Like you have to be able to use the right thing at the right time. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we're having now. And everybody wants to move fast and, oh, we just need to fail fast. No, don't use what you read on the internet because you're not that company. This is a completely different company. I even had someone say, we should use the Spotify model. And I'm like, do you understand the Spotify model? Do you know what that is? And they're like, yeah, we just break everybody up into squads. And I'm like, we're not a music company. We're not a Swedish music company. We are an American fintech, and we can build our own framework. So I think that's the biggest thing, changing mindsets and making sure that you have leadership buy-in, but not thinking about it from a watered down, we're just doing Agile or we're going Agile. And making sure that you have people in your organization that are really passionate about it. I was the only Scrum Master. Then I partnered with 2 project managers. They became Scrum Masters, and then we all moved to Agile coaches. So just making sure that if someone says that you're going to do an Agile transformation, having these tough conversations with them, not being disrespectful, but making sure that they understand, hey, you're using the term MVP incorrectly. That's not what an MVP is. And just using everything that you learn in Disciplined Agile and being kind of that thought leader in the organization. It's very, and you know, I think you have to be kind of like the crazy lady in the village or the crazy guy in the village telling people what to do.
Yeah.
They may not listen to you at first, but you have to be able to show and improve. So does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Donte. That's awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, as you're speaking, a lot of things resonated with me because as an Agile coach, that is what we signed up for. You know, we need to be able to have those confronting conversations. They are never easy. And the most important thing is you're having these conversations with people that pay your bills, that pay your salary. And so it could be very confronting. Now, what do you do when you have such, again, that's what we signed up for. And 2 things also, leadership buy-in, right? It is quite very important to have leadership buy-in. Without leadership buy-in, 100 out of 100 times that I've been part of great transformations, even adoption, not to talk about transformation, there is no leadership buy-in. It's more like failing from the start, from the beginning. And of course, the foundation. The second thing is mindset. You know, it won't happen overnight, but over time it's going to happen. People will begin to get it especially with consistency, just like you shared, Donte. Thank you so much.
Can I add something to that too?
Yes, please.
You also have to go back and inspect and adapt. You know, just because, yeah, we're doing great now, you still have to continue to use that guided continuous improvement as well. So I think that's one of the aspects. So, yep.
All right. Just before we round up, is there any other question or comment before we round up?
Yes, one question. Good evening, all. Donte, thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask, I've actually not found myself adopting an DA, but I've been extensively reading on MBI, and it actually caught my attention. And I wanted to know if, while adopting, MBI, did it really facilitate your work in creating value? I mean, considering time, I know MBI encourages, input from all other probably supporting experts and all of that within the organization, being that it's enterprise aware. Did it really slow down your work, or did it actually facilitate? Did it help you really get to value on time?
Well, like I mentioned, that project, the main one that I gave in my real world example, it was supposed to only be a couple of months, and it's still going on now. So what the MBI didn't get it home on time, but it did get it back on track in my case. And now it's really, they finally gave it another due date, and we're very close to reaching that due date. I'm pretty sure we may go over it by a week or two. But as far as, I think one of the questions you asked as well is input from other people. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So for that, to get other people to help out with it and to believe in it, the project manager and I had to actually get together and show bad metrics or bad stats. So we're not delivering this project on time because we have all this other work that's dependent on it. It wasn't scoped out, and this project manager was hired. This was the first project that was dropped in her lap. And she was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like, I have a project that's already started and it's already a year and a half behind. What am I supposed to do? So her and I had to get together and say, yeah, we believe in MBIs, but to get the other project managers and her manager to buy into it, as well as the managers of those other teams, we had to show this is the only way that we're going to get this done. Right now, if we just take these projects the way that we have them lined up now, that's going to end up pushing all of the projects out because they literally wanted to work them concurrently. Let's finish the MVP first. Let's finish the logging project first. Then we'll start with this Hashi platform project because we're going to need that. So we would have been pushing things out till 2023 probably. What we said is the good thing is, since this is infrastructure, we can take the little parts that we need from that. And as you make changes to the infrastructure using the CI/CD pipeline, those changes to get deployed or updates get deployed to that main cloud infrastructure project anyway. And it's seamless because, it's all cloud-based. So being able to say, working with that architecture team, they just need to give us these pieces and they've guaranteed that it's not going to break anything and it's seamless. We were able to come up with that. So showing the metrics that, we're not going to get that main, those customers migrated till 2023, as well as saying we don't need these projects to be completed. We only need parts and pieces of each of the projects in this small container, MBI, to get this main project back on track is all we need. So again, it took a couple of meetings for her to convince her boss to go that route, as well as meeting with the managers of the other three teams. Like at first they were just like, I don't I don't get it. What do you mean you need a piece of this and a piece of that? And so we had to put together this presentation, kind of what I showed you. And we were able to get it that way and get their approval to do it. Does that answer your question?
Sure, it does. Thank you.
Give people bad news, and I think that's the way to get them to lean on your side, especially when they're bleeding money from doing projects.
Oh, wow. That
Yeah.
was a good way. That was a good way. I think the takeaway from that question and the answer is that in the beginning, it may slow things down, but at the end, the value comes around. So think about it this way. If you have to wait till 90% of the project is delivered and you know you are delivering the wrong thing versus knowing that 25% down the line. So you get on track early. It doesn't necessarily mean you finish early, but you get on track early and you deliver value early as well. And at the end of the day, you minimize waste. In the beginning, it slows down. It may slow down. At the end, the value comes out. Plus, if it becomes a habit in an organization, going on from the very first MBI, it's gonna really get better and better and better. Cool, thanks for that question, Rich. And I'm just gonna ask for one more time if there's any question, and then we'll round up because time is fast spent. Looks like there is no other question. Now, the conversation continues. So we'll be talking more about terms like these, MBIs, break it down into small, understandable chunks so that we can always have bites and pieces of these. And at some point, when you had everything together, you can see that your ideas, your understanding, is solid with all these concepts. The MBIs of this world, the Disciplined Agile toolkit as a whole is very robust, and there is always something to learn. So I just want to put this out there. On this note, I just want to say thank you, Donte, for taking out time to really share your experience with us. And I believe every one of us here has taken one thing or the other from what you've shared, at least one penny dropped. So what we encourage people to do is, it's not only valuable to listen to ideas like these, please, whatever you can put to practice in your organization, in your personal life, in whatever you do, try to implement it, see how it works. Sometimes the concepts are very complex or complicated, but when you really try to apply it, you see how easy it could be. And then you can become the evangelist of what works. So Donte, again, I want to say thank you. Really appreciate your time. Okay. Later, you asked if the recording will be shared. Yeah, we'll make the recording available. I'm just thinking of where I'm putting in place where to put them so that people can have access to them every time that they need to look at it. So definitely we'll make it available. Just a couple of more information for roundup. It is our expectation that every monthly will continue to show up, and we will continue to build a little community of agile practitioners where good information is shared. And so everyone is a stakeholder in this. So a couple of us have wealth of experience, and we just want to bridge the gap of agile experience. And I can see some of them on the call, who are the people I respect so much. So please, I just want to say, this continues. We'll meet around this time next month, where we'll bring another, interesting topic and another very respected, presenter our way. And I hope you join us. So on that note, I guess we can call it a day. and then I'll see you all next time. Thank you very much for joining, and have a very wonderful night or morning or evening. Anyway, you call it.
Great job.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dante.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.